You are listening to Radio Islam, and we have a special program this evening. It is a panel discussion with regards to the Arrivals series and the Islamic perspective on that. On the panel this evening, we have Maulana Ibrahim Bam, Maulana Sulaiman Mullah, and Maulana Yusuf Abed. Your comment, Maulana Sulaiman Mullah Sahib, is it necessary for ulama to be commenting on these kind of issues on a documentary or on a movie of this nature?
Maulana Jazakallah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I think I'm going to approach it fully to try and answer your question, and also in a bit of a broader brush. One of the things that inevitably are going to come in the discussion is how do we contend with technology? Because obviously part of the series, people that have viewed it and have informed us the aspect of the phones and the aspect of internet and the aspect of computer and the rest of it, which has become a common feature in our lives, and we obviously cannot do without it, and that's a reality. Now, do we shun technological advancement? Do we put it in one side and say all this is evil and we shun it and we discard it? Or do we select the good out of it and then highlight and discard the evil? And I think in that context we feature here to say yes, definitely there is a role that technology and all these other things at our disposal is. And it might be digressing slightly from the point, but in Surah An-Nahl, and for our reference, we perhaps might know, or we need to know, that many of these surahs have a common, conventional, formal name, but it also has other names. By way of example, Surah Taha is known as Surah Kalim as well, Surah Fatiha is known as Surah Shifa as well. In the very same way, Surah Nahl is a chapter of the 14 Juz, it's known as Surah Ni'am. So simply because in that chapter Allah highlights all His bounties. And in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the mode of transport, and then Allah goes on to وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, and Allah will continue innovating for you and creating for you other means of transport, that which you cannot comprehend and understand. And if you look under this verse, commentators explore that technological advancement has been spelled out very, very clearly under this ayah, وَيَخْلُقُ, and Allah will form and innovate for you مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So the message is technology by itself is not evil, is not wicked, it's not nasty, it's using and abusing it. So I think there is a definite need. I'm sure every scholar in some capacity has been approached to find some direction or comment on these things. And obviously our position is here to signal a word of caution that it's filled with a lot of evil material, and hence we should abstain. And to push it beneath the carpet and to avoid the discussion when it has already entered the homes of many is obviously not the correct way to approach it.
Mullah Yusuf Sahib, you are a teacher at a Muslim school. You interact with the youth, and you would be in a better position to tell us, to what extent have the youth been exposed to this? To what extent have they been impressed by this? And I suppose that would flow into the next question. To what extent would there then be a need to counter whatever misinformation there may be in this documentary?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Maulana, interesting. In that question of yours, perhaps there's an answer to the solution to these challenges that we are facing. When I received your phone call informing me about this program, coincidentally I went to a class after that, and I asked them, who of you have watched this Arrivals? And a group of girls who are very studious, very deen in kind, alhamdulillah, they say we watched it. And then I asked them, what was your impression of it? And the girl said, Maulana, I think we should discourage people from watching it. Then I asked her why. She said, apart from the music and some of the visuals that it contains, the subtle message that it's giving, perhaps from a perspective that it creates despondency in the ummah, it creates a sense of hopelessness, number one. Number two, she pointed out that there are certain aspects there where the producers of the program have not necessarily given the authentic viewpoint in as far as the hadith is concerned, and in as far as few issues regarding aqidah are concerned. So to me that was very significant, and I said we have hope. And the hope is that exactly what Maulana Bam and Maulana Sulaiman Mullah mentioned, the Quran, in that our ta'aleem has to be of such a level where even as much as it may seem basic and very rudimentary, but we equip our children with aqidah and with ilm that they can combat it. And I think in this case here, alhamdulillah, we have to give due praise to the authors of the Tasheel series as far as the Aqaid Kitab is concerned, as far as the Tafsir Kitab is concerned, that they have equipped in those textbooks perhaps sufficient knowledge, sufficient guidance, and sufficient aqidah, and sufficient ayat for our children to grasp and to hold that as a beacon of hope and guidance, and not to be overawed by technology, because this particular presentation is a typical modern cut and paste job. It is a modern way of conveying information, and perhaps that is the biggest disadvantage of this year, that the information may not be 100%, but it tends to be very dramatic and very movie style type of thing. So again, we need to stick to the sources and the authentic sources, and that is Quran and Sunnah.
And I'm just looking at an email that has come in from a listener in Zimbabwe. And I would assume that this is a teenager, and she says that I've come across people in my class who have told me that since watching the arrivals, they have now they have started to understand how the world is controlled, why Muslims are oppressed, why certain things have happened. A lot of things, a lot of current day happenings have started to make sense, and it has also awakened within us the consciousness of the coming of the Mahdi, the Dajjal, and the preparation that is required in that regard.
Maulana J, I think I'm going to approach it in this way. That's a very pertinent question, and we thank the listener, and that's the feedback we need from them to know how we can set the tone. Just to take it on one note of Maulana Yusuf Abed, and he spoke what that sister alluded to, the aspect of helplessness. Now, even if we exclude this particular arrival series, the ummah is at a very low. And really we don't need to compound the problem. Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddamah, which is very, very famous, in there he has written something very, very pertinent, and honestly we need to, write this in gold. He said, throughout history, many nations have suffered a physical defeat, but that has never marked the end of a nation. But when a nation has become a victim of a psychological defeat, then that marks the end of a nation. And if you really look at this here, what happens? You see feebleness, helplessness setting into you. And I mean, again, we take the whole battle of Uhud, when Mus'ab ibn Umair radiallahu anhu was killed. What was the strategy of the enemies and the infidels? To circulate the rumor of the assassination of Nabi alayhi salam, thereby promoting the psychological defeat. That your Nabi is gone, what are you going to do? Sit back and the tale is over. So I think that's a very, very pertinent point. And let's not forget, the Quran has told us, in Ja'akum fasiqum binaba'in fatabayyanu, that when an evil, a wicked person comes to you with any information, then probe it, investigate it. So I think that's a very, very important thing. Now let's look at one hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, prior to Qiyamah, scholars will leave this world, and ittakhadha an-nasu ru'usan juhala, people will make ignorant people their leaders. Honestly speaking, for a big segment, the internet has become their leaders, has become their spiritual mentors. So they literally take direction from there, and that is how they move on. To answer the question of the sister, and to be more specific, and we appreciate the input, I'm going to differ with the aspect that, you know what, after viewing this, I have become more conscious. The reason is we're not reading what we ought to read. We're not accessing the information what we have to. But what happens is, when something comes with a bit of a flavor of some, excitement around it, or it has some recreational attachment to it, now that's eye-catching, and that's how it now intrigues us, and we get into it. And this is another very, very important concern, and I think off-air Maulana Ibrahim had alluded to this fact, to this point here, is that we tend to become so obsessed by these theories that for a moment, by equation, we exclude Allah from the entire happenings. Now a simple thing, how the Master sallallahu alaihi wasallam had explained it, that he was sitting with the Sahaba, and it rained by night, and he got up in the morning and he said, "Ala tadruna madha qala rabbukum?" O my Sahaba, are you aware of what Allah has said? And they said, Allahu wa rasuluhu a'lam, Allah and His Nabi knows best. He said, Allah has said, and it's a hadith Qudsi, that there are some servants of mine who said, mutirna bi fadlillah. And there are other servants who said, mutirna bi nawi kada wa kada. There are those who got up in the morning and said, because this cloud came into contact with that cloud exclusively, scientifically, that is why we enjoyed rain. These are those people who believe in technology, science exclusively, and they deny me. And there are those who got up in the morning and said that Allah gave us rain through His sheer mercy. These are those who bring iman on Allah exclusively. So while we don't deny these happenings, but we need to understand whatever is happening is part of the overall plan of Allah, and it's happening by the allowance of Allah. And this is not something that is altering Allah's planning.